Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As said, let's jump right in and talk about learning. And in order to do, I just want to put us in a bit of a mindset. Picture this. You've been working at this fresh early stage startup. Let's call it Dev Tool Limited, right? And you've been working there as a software developer and you've been doing your thing. And there's a big code base that you're confronted with. And as you're onboarding, you're learning about how things are done at this company, or things are changing very quickly. Starting next week, we're going to do something else. And then the big pivot comes and there's new goals and strategies. And as you're processing all of that, my goodness, you are given a new task. And then it's all plopped on you and you're given the green light to go ahead, and you start wondering, you feel a little overwhelmed. You think, goodness, where do I start? And well, today I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. So hi, yes, my name's Ramon. As Aaron said, my pronouns are he, him. I'm originally from Chile, but I've been living in Austria for a very long time. I'm a developer advocate at Suborbital. I do some code instructing that I really enjoy, and just such a big fan of community and core skills as a part of those, because I feel like those help us grow as software developers. And of course, I do lots of coding live streaming, which I just highly enjoy. The photo on the left that you see there, that's me giving a talk about a Little Dance Revolution controller I made with a Raspberry Pi. Lots of fun. I'm sure I'll find a link somewhere. But yeah, let's talk like a grand statement to kick us off. Now, this might sound perhaps obvious, but I really want to be super clear. You're not going to know something before learning it. We have to start somewhere in the learning process. So much so, I really want to actually, let me just cross out that you real quick. None of us know something before we start learning it. It's a natural part of the process. And I don't know about you, but something that I experience quite often when I'm learning something is that initial stage of being overwhelmed by a new problem and not having any idea what I'm doing, and just feeling maybe a tiny bit of despair and thinking, I don't even know where to start, and it's all overwhelming. And it can be, and this happens to all of us at some point or another, and later on in our careers as well. But you do reach a point, don't you, where after going at the problem for a little while and you start recognizing patterns, you start thinking, hold on, this problem reminds me of this concept that I learned at another point in my career. And as you go through that, everything starts falling into place. And eventually you're confronted by what I lovingly call an aha moment. And in my line of work, this is something that's critical and almost like a currency. If I can accumulate those aha moments that I impart on others and myself, it's just the biggest feeling in the world. But what happens? I have that aha moment, I revel in it, and in my next task, quite often, I'm back to square one. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm going to be a little bit nerdy, if I may, and bring up a video game that really made me think of this. And this is perhaps one of my favorite video games of all time. It's called Celeste. And it's a beautiful story about this woman who climbs Mount Celeste. Her name is Madeline, and she confronts lots of challenges as she climbs the mountain and discovers who she is. And this is a jumping, running game, and it's quite difficult. What I love about it is that it allows you to adjust that difficulty for your needs. But something I experienced playing this game was something that I feel in my day-to-day at work, especially when working in tech, which is that every new level, which would be a square level with one part, with one challenge I have to beat, I find myself thinking, my goodness, I have no idea how to beat this. I'm never going to beat this level. And I just get frustrated and I spend lots of time on it. And after a while, things start clicking. I start learning patterns. I start recognizing patterns from previous levels. And eventually I beat that level. And it's the best feeling in the world. Only to get to the next level and it's the same thing all over again. I want to tell you a story. This year, my friend Jess and I started teaching free software development boot camps. She started doing web development ones, and I've been doing JavaScript ones. And we've been doing this by guiding people through the Free Code Camp JavaScript certification. If you're not familiar with it, Free Code Camp is an open source platform for learning to code. It is incredible. And as I was doing it, I've got a link here with a timestamp that might be interesting for folks. I was in the middle of doing the Free Code Camp exercises when I came upon this exercise you see here. This is a screenshot from the live stream where I was doing the record collection exercise. And as I was going through it and I was showing my problem solving skills, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got stuck. And I'm not talking like a little stuck. I'm talking like really stuck. And let me tell you all, getting stuck live when you're trying to teach folks stuff, for me, it was an absolutely demoralizing experience. And I did eventually figure out the solution, and I was able to give folks the solution they needed and teach along with that. But I was very frustrated. I spent like 25 or almost half an hour on that exercise. And I remember turning off the stream light and then going to plop on my sofa and thinking, like, my goodness, I have no idea what I'm doing. And the experience I got from that was afterwards, somebody sent me a DM and they said, "Hey, Ramon, listen, that looked really hard. Congrats on getting it done. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing us that even folks who have been doing this for a long time get stuck too." And this to me was revelatory because it reminded me of that experience, that cycle of not knowing what I'm doing to recognizing patterns to eventually fixing the problem. And how easy it is to get caught up in the moment. And I forget, hey, maybe I don't have all the answers after all, but then I forgot that I do formulate them over time. I want to take a moment to also plug a talk that's given at this bootcamp, which is from Dr. Barbara Oakley and Zach Caceres, where they talk about how learning works, learning how to learn. It's semi-related to this topic I'm talking to you today, but I highly recommend it as well. But what about learning at work? Because sure, we can learn in our own time, but in our jobs, is it expected of us to learn? And I want to say, yes, absolutely. In fact, we all do it at least once in our jobs. Hopefully, our jobs will provide us with a good, all-encompassing onboarding experience. And every time I've been onboarded onto a new code base, onto a new team, onto a new project, I have found myself thinking quite often, my goodness, I have no idea what I'm doing. This year, when I was going into my new job, and this is a job where I have to do developer advocacy for WebAssembly as a technology, which I knew very little about. And my point was to learn in public and do what I can to make the community better. I had a revelation once again. It's not that I have no idea what I'm doing. It's that I don't know what I'm doing yet. And that is a valuable perspective because then I can start finding holes in the curse of knowledge that plagues us all as technologists. What is the curse of knowledge? This is an experience where folks are working on a specific code base, working in one place for so long that they forget what it's like to come in from the outside. And what can we do with that? We can start asking questions. We can start questioning things. Moreover, when we're getting onboarded with this new technology, and I would even say further out into our working experience, what a powerful notion it is to come into a new experience thinking, okay, I get it. But what if I, for example, say I'm doing some CSS? What if I make it blue instead of red? Or what if I make this purposefully break? I spent 8 years teaching children to code, and one of the most important lessons they've taught me is that one of the best ways to learn is to break stuff. Because really, you're going around, you're like with kids, we were coding games and they were just like putting hundreds of thousands of enemies on screen and then going, hold on, my computer no longer works. Why? Because they're overloading the computer. What a valuable lesson that is. And that experience brings in new ideas. And when you're sharing those new ideas, it can be a little bit scary to be confronted with questions, isn't it? Maybe you thought at some point in your career, hey, I could take up public speaking. P.S. You totally could. And if that microphone, picture of a microphone doesn't say it, it is totally the place where you can come in and share your ideas and share your knowledge. But what happens? I've had this fear. I have it to this day where somebody's going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to. And to realize how liberating and empowering the 3 words, I don't know, are, where you can show that as a technologist, we don't have all the answers all the time. I even say more so than that. We have the experience to add a little comma and 3 even better words onto that. I don't know, comma, let's find out. And going on a journey of discovering and learning and collaboration. And this is something we do as a community all the time. But of course, if you're alone and you're stuck in a problem, what do you do about asking for help? So I want to ask everyone a question. How long do you wait before reaching out for help? And I find that there are two camps here. One are the folks who reach out immediately for help, and others are the folks that I'm in the latter camp where I take far too long. It's my anxiety, and I feel like I'm going to be a bother to my team or that I'm going to be a detriment. And this can go on for ages, if not forever. And there's a balance there, isn't it? Because if you take too little to reach out, especially at your early learning stages, we risk not learning how to solve problems. We risk not practicing enough. If we take too long, of course, we risk holding a timeline, holding a team, holding a project back. So one piece of advice that I'd love to share with you is to have a heuristic and try to be as consistent as possible with it. For example, for me, I say half an hour and then I'm done. Then I'll go ask for help. Then the question becomes, okay, but how can we be as helpful as possible when asking for help? And here's a couple of things that I've learned. One is asking narrow, pointed questions. Of course, you can come in and say, hey, this thing doesn't work. Can you come take a look? Or, and it's just very different, you can say, hey, I'm having some trouble logging in since updating to this latest version of a package. Could you come take a look? And this already puts the helper in a right frame of mind for being able to help you. Same goes for sharing what you've tried, eliminating those possibilities so you can get right to the point and letting your helper eliminate those possibilities. Showing some steps to reproduce the problem. Again, super helpful, being like, I tried this, I tried that. Now let's talk about pair programming. Pair programming has been demonstrated and studied to show that it is an effective way for two people to bring out the best of a piece of code when collaborating. I'd even go as far as to say, if you can, get an ensemble going. You've got your driver, your navigator, and a couple of people around you to collaborate and learn together, because then the learning goes exponentially. One thing I want to remind you, as Aaron said, this is a nonstop learning process. And as tech changes, it might seem like I'm going to learn React as the first thing I do. That way I'm set for life. And I've had that mentality as well early in my career. But I found that the pieces of technology that I learn can build on top of each other. When I was teaching kids to code, I wrote a bachelor paper about pedagogy, about theories of learning and teaching. And I came upon the notion of constructivism, which says that learning is modularly built. It's kind of like Lego pieces that you put together and they contribute to one another rather than passively absorbing information. And I found that this applied to my technology understanding as well. When I started developing software, I was making Mac apps with Objective-C. Then I started doing Ruby on Rails, which led me to CoffeeScript. Then I got on React. Then I got on Vue.js. And then I got on Rust, which kind of seems like I'm going all over the place. But my goodness, what an incredible way to be able to have these technologies and some of their competences kind of transfer over. For example, with Objective-C, I learned memory management, which has been tremendously helpful for some of the more trickier parts of my coding. And in the future, what I really want to drive home is who knows what we're going to be doing next, honestly. So before I go, I just want to assure you once again, we don't know everything before learning it. We don't fully understand something before knowing it. You don't know it before you learn it. I also want to assure you that experimenting is vital to learning. And knowledge, again, constructivism says our knowledge is built on existing knowledge. And depending on your situation, of course, I understand that in some contexts it's going to be easier than others. But this is one for Ramón of the past. Always know you can ask for help. And I want to leave you with one thing, because when I started writing this talk for today, for you, let me tell you, I had a very similar experience of having no idea what I was talking about. Here's some further reading about the things that informed me about learning. There's also some links to those talks that I mentioned, as well as a little plug for Celeste. It's a very fun game. There's my slides there as well. And with that, I say, folks, you have been wonderful, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions you might have.